That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Instigators, the 14th film directed by Doug Liman, which is going to receive a limited theatrical release on August 2nd, 2024, before it will be streaming globally on Apple TV Plus August 9th, 2024.
Do I know a Doug Liman film?
Oh, you do? You always talk about how much you love Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
But he's been around a minute. Early hits were like Go and Swingers. The Bourne Identity, he did the first of those, which first united him with Matt Damon. Of course, the Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie film. We have reviewed his last 4 films, or 3 films, including Locked Up, Locked Down with Anne Hathaway and Chiwetel Ejiofor, which is a pandemic movie that I remember kind of liking, Chaos Walking, and his reboot of Roadhouse.
Okay. What is The Instigators about? It follows 2 robbers who must go on the run with the help of one of their therapists after a theft doesn't go as planned. That makes it sound kind of light. This film is not light. What's your pull quote?
A bit slick, sad, and sweet, The Instigators might utilize familiar narrative antics, but an engaging ensemble cast elevates Affleck and Damon as likably inept criminals.
Mine. It turns out The Instigators is the most absurd, frustrating, and thoroughly enjoyable therapy session I've seen.
That's quite a praise.
I really like this movie.
And Casey Affleck co-wrote it.
I did not want to watch this movie.
You did not.
But I did. Mm-hmm. So, surprise, surprise.
Yeah, I think those are the best surprises when you have very low expectations. Because Matt Damon and Casey Affleck are not 2 people that I'm like, oh yeah, I need to have that in my life. But yeah, I enjoyed it overall.
So the film is set in modern day Boston. Casey Affleck is pegged to commit a robbery. Specifically, he's asked to rob the mayor. So Ron Perlman is the current mayor of Boston, and there's an election happening.
And it's assumed that Ron Perlman's mayor will continue to be so, as has happened for many years, it seems.
And we understand that his character is, like, he takes cash bribes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And typically on election night when he wins, a bunch of people come to his party and give him cash, like to bribe him. So he's known to have a huge wad of cash on that night, and that's what Casey Affleck is expected to steal. And he is told to like come up with a team, and all he conjures up is Matt Damon. Mm-hmm. And then Jack Harlow is also part of it. The people who tap Casey Affleck are these 2 guys who run a bakery, but also I guess are like into organized crime.
As one is sometimes in Boston. Michael Stuhlbarg and Alfred Molina. Mm-hmm.
So they go to rob Ron Perlman, but guess what they find out? Ron Perlman did not win re-election, which is not necessarily incumbent on him having a bunch of cash. In fact, he had so much cash on hand that an armored truck came to pick it up before.
I think they said twice.
So their plan is foiled on every account because they had planned to show up at this like party hall.
The Wharf.
And there'd be no one there. But the gag is Ron Perlman as mayor refuses to concede.
Sound familiar?
So he's like holed up at the Wharf with all his supporters there. So there's a full house when these 3 dummies go to rob it. Everything that could go wrong goes wrong. Jack Harlow ends up getting killed. Mm-hmm. So for the next...
And shoots the police chief. Kills the police chief, yeah.
So for the next hour of the film, Matt Damon and Casey Affleck are on the run. They get caught several times. Mm-hmm. They're able to wiggle out of it. At one point, they enlist the help of Chau, who is Matt Damon's psychiatrist.
Dr. Donna Rivera.
And then they take her hostage, like a friendly hostage.
She volunteers to be a hostage. Because she cares for Matt Damon.
On a level that is so absurd.
Rory. Also, Rory and Cobby were their names. I don't know if you caught that.
No, I didn't.
Which, reading about it, I was like, oh, I again, was another reason I thought I was really going to like this film with character names like that for some reason.
But the reason Matt Damon agrees to do this, because he's like a veteran, a Marine veteran. He's not a bad guy, has not engaged in criminal activity before, but he needs $32,480 to be exact. And he needs that money because he lost his wife, like through a divorce, and is estranged from his son because he feels like a loser. He wasn't able to pay child support. He owes like money on his mortgage. And in his mind, he's committed to the fact that if he cannot resolve this situation within a year, he will commit suicide. And it's a year. So he's kind of a man with nothing to lose when Casey Affleck asks him to help him with this burglary. So in the end, they figure out that the mayor has a bunch of money in his office, which we'll get to. But they go and break into the mayor's vault, end up getting like hemmed up there, but they're able to escape, which we'll explain. So in the end, they do get arrested, but because they had a bunch of information that would incriminate the mayor, the outgoing mayor, Ron Perlman, the new mayor lets them go, which we need to talk about. So in the end, it's like a happy ending because Casey Affleck goes to see Chau because he has a crush on her, and it seems like she's open to that. And Matt Damon, we assume through Chau, got the son the money that they need. So we see Matt Damon at his son's hockey game. All's well that ends well.
With the song that the title takes itself from playing at the end, which is Thunderclap Newman's Something in the Air.
This film's pretty dark, specifically the fact that Matt Damon is like doing this because he's, if this doesn't pan out, he's going to kill himself. But it's also quite funny.
Unexpectedly so.
In a very dry way.
Because I think on paper it sounds like this wouldn't work at all. And that's why I think like the casting is really important in this, because I really liked Chau, even though what her character is doing is so dumb.
Well,
a lot of the time.
The reason it all works for me is because every character is absurd. Matt Damon is like, Chau, and the film opens with their therapy session, and he alludes to the fact that it's about like his time is up. So he needs to do, he tells her, she asks him, have you tried everything? And he says, well, there's one thing I haven't tried, which I'm assuming meant like robbing a bank. So that's why he's doing this. But it's like, I mean, you could just go see your son. Like, you don't have to come up with all this money. So he's absurd. Casey Affleck's absurd for just how, like, we have no idea how he even got entangled with these bakery owners / gangsters. The bakery owners, I don't know what you thought, but I interpreted these two men as being like a gay couple.
I was unclear, but it come like, are you talking about when they both meet up at the cabin?
So the main one,
Michael Stuhlbarg.
He's very over the top. And then when he realizes the jig is up, he flees to a cabin in Montreal. And he's wearing a fur coat. He's being very dramatic. And then his partner in business or life, whatever, is like the one who bakes all the goods. And then when they realize that the jig is really up, then the partner goes to Montreal. So it seemed like they lived together.
I was unclear for sure, but yeah, you could probably.
But they seem like absurd villains. Like if they are gay, it's like these two homosexuals who run a bakery, but also deal with like criminal activity and.
Which Alfred Molina certainly has played homosexual. Well, Stuhlbarg too, technically.
Then Chau is the psychiatrist. She has this unprofessional and unbelievable allegiance to Matt Damon that is akin to stories you've seen where like a psychiatrist lost a patient to suicide and so they're very sensitive to it, which Casey Affleck even asks her, is that why you're doing this? But of course, this character takes it to a degree that is nonsense. So I think because, Ving Rhames.
Ving Rhames playing
the head of like a special ops unit, driving around in like a tank.
For Boston PD named Toomey.
He's commissioned by Ron Perlman to retrieve a bracelet. So we find out that when the robbery goes wrong and they kind of inadvertently bump into the mayor and his cronies, they get desperate and say, give us everything in your pockets and your jewelry. And they take a gold bracelet from Ron Perlman. And we find out that that bracelet is of grave importance because the combination to Ron Perlman's safe is engraved on that bracelet. And all of his payola cash is in that vault. And if he doesn't get it out and the new mayor sees it, for sure, Ron Perlman and all his cronies are going to prison. So it is Ving Rhames who's commissioned to find it. But the fact that he is willing to do this, Ving Rhames, driving around in this tank, it's just everyone's absurd. So I think it all works because all of it is ridiculous. And I like that it commits to that.
And the pacing is pretty good as well.
It's nonstop.
Yeah.
And at every turn, we think that the two of them are going to get caught. Because immediately after Jack Harlow is shot and killed, they flee the scene by stealing an armored truck. And then at a point, Casey Affleck realizes, because a phone starts ringing in the truck, that there's probably a guard locked in the back of the truck. So if they try to open it, this person's going to try to kill them. And I thought it was a very funny scene when they do decide to open the back, and sure enough, there is a guard there trying to kill them.
It's also one of several scenes where you hear the police sirens coming. Like, they are about to be busted.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
But like, I enjoyed that anxiety I was feeling of like, God, these idiots are so ridiculous.
And I can't remember the last time I thought Casey Affleck was amusing.
I enjoyed him in this. And then Matt Damon, who I do like. I mean, I think he's like an affable guy.
Sure.
His character, when Jack Harlow is trying to go over the plans of how they're going to execute the robbery, and then we find out that Jack Harlow is getting plans for the building they're about to rob from Zillow. But then we see that Matt Damon is taking notes. Like, you're going to write down notes on the plan for this like criminal activity we're doing. And he does it several times. And he's clearly afraid. Like, this is not in his nature to do this.
Yeah, and that's what, there's kind of like a sweetness to it, but yeah.
Well, in that vein, Matt and Casey end up at a house hoping that they can like find safety and come up with a plan. But Matt Damon decides to call the bakery to talk to the people who hired them to say like, because Matt Damon had worked out a deal with them. He says, I need $32,480, so I will only agree to do this robbery if you guarantee me that money. So even though everything has gone south, he calls the bakery saying, okay, I still need my money.
That was part of the deal.
And of course, they send some other cronies to go and not only retrieve the bracelet, but kill them.
Paul Walter Hauser.
So of course, we think, oh, it's curtains for these two dummies. But no, Casey Affleck convinces the other bad guy that you can't shoot us because this house is filled with gasoline. So let us go. And they do. And the house blows up. And that's the first of three moments where we realize that Casey Affleck's character is like a little pyro.
Yeah, there's some considerable arson going on in this. Well, that house belonged to a character named Mr. Kelly, who is the owner of a bar that Casey Affleck likes to frequent, because we also meet Casey Affleck, who's driving around on a bike that has one of those breathalyzers attached to it, and he's always having to find somebody to blow into it for him.
Yeah.
Notably, Mr. Kelly is played by Andre DeShields, who was the first person to play The Wiz on Broadway.
Who was he in The Wiz?
The Wiz.
Oh, like the actual wizard? Oh, interesting. Okay, so then Casey Affleck was shot during the initial heist. So Matt Damon says, well, I know who can help us. My psychiatrist, she should be able to patch you up.
Because she's an MD.
So he goes to the hospital and convinces her to help them. And she says, I'll only agree to help you if you make me like an official hostage so that I don't get in trouble. Takes him to the house, patches up Casey Affleck, but calls the police. So then, of course, again, we think the jig is up and they escape in her car. And then we get like a 10-minute chase sequence.
It's pretty well staged.
That I thought was really fun. And in the background, the song
Downtown by Petula Clark
is playing. I thought that was a lot of fun. And then during that chase scene, Chau tells them, for insurance purposes, please make sure you total my car. I thought that was funny. Then they get to the bar. And Casey Affleck, being so stupid, he's saying that the gentleman who owns the bar is like a father to him. Who plays that character again?
Andre DeShields.
So he's like, he's not going to set us up. And as soon as that man gets to the bar and sees that Ving Rhames is there, he rats their asses out. Because earlier he tells Casey Affleck, like, I'm done with you. I'm trying to save you from getting into shenanigans. So I did all I could. And then they get out of that situation by blowing up the bar.
Yeah, that man lost all his stuff.
But he does say, like, do whatever you want because I have insurance. But he did lose his beach house and his bar. Mm-hmm. It's absurd. Then when they realize that because then they escape the bar by blowing it up and getting on a bus. And then we also have this theme of Montreal.
Everybody's trying to run away to Montreal.
Because the bakery owners go to Montreal. Then Matt Damon wants to go to Montreal. And Casey's saying Casey wants to go to Montreal. And Matt's saying that's stupid. We have no way. Like, how are we going to get there? Walk? It's like the dead of winter. Uh-huh. So they end up realizing that if you want this money, you need to go down to City Hall. Because that bracelet had a combination to a safe. And I bet all the mayor's payola is in that safe. So these fools break into the building pretending to be firefighters.
And Casey Affleck memorized the numbers on the bracelet.
But how do they shut shit down? Casey Affleck puts gasoline in some pipes and lights the pipes on fire, which causes like a total like evacuation of City Hall. And I thought that scene was really fun because then they end up finding the safe. But now like the SWAT team is there and they're like surrounded.
Well, because Toby Jones, who plays the attorney of Ron Perlman, is tasked with staying by the safe while the building's being evacuated.
Yes.
And they are claiming he is their hostage, but he immediately turns on his employer by giving them the
He has some hard drives that would incriminate Ron Perlman. But then guess who the police allowed to be the negotiator? Hong Chau.
Which is also...
It's absurd.
Highly unbelievable, yeah.
But it was so, like, it's just so ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So that she goes up there and they're having, like, a therapy session. Mm-hmm. And then she tells them the only way, like, you guys have to run. So what do? They push the safe filled with money out of, like, the 10th floor. And I thought this was an amazing scene because it's like the calm before the storm because all these bystanders see all of this money fall to the ground and it's blowing in the air. And then all of a sudden, House of Pain's Jump Around starts playing. And all these bystanders create chaos. And then Matt and Casey are able to escape in a fire truck again. Mm-hmm. But then Ving Rhames catches up with them. They get locked up. Okay, this is the part I don't understand. First of all, when an election happens for mayor, do the mayors swap offices like that day?
Well, I don't know if it has to be that day, but the current mayor has to
turn over the office.
Yes,
I was confused by that.
They have to acknowledge that the results of the election are...
Yeah, but would the new mayor have access to his office like that next day?
I don't know. I feel like...
Because Ron Perlman was acting like, oh, they're going to get access to my office like today.
Immediately, like I have to give up the keys. No, I think there's probably a little time.
Because also Ben Affleck, Casey and Matt get put in jail. But then some person goes to the new mayor and says, oh, we have these hard drives proving Ron Perlman has $100 million in like overseas accounts. So you could either incriminate prosecute these two guys and then these will be admitted into evidence, or you could let them go and they won't be. And then next thing you know, Matt and Casey are out of jail. So what did you think that means?
Because then if they prosecute, then it's on record.
But why wouldn't the new mayor want to incriminate the old mayor?
Because the mayor's office can seize that money and use it for their own means rather than give it back to the state.
Oh, so you think the new mayor was going to do something honorable with the money?
Well, do something that they want to with the money and they don't have to be held accountable.
So is the implication that the new mayor's kind of shady too?
No, I think that you can take kickbacks where you get them.
That's shady. Like they should have prosecuted these two guys so they could prosecute the mayor's office.
That's most certainly why they did not prosecute them.
Right. So, but I mean, I didn't love that. I kind of wish Ron Perlman would have. They do end up catching up with Ron Perlman because he's trying to go to Montreal, and the police catch his ass at the airport.
It had the vibe of a lot of like a lot of 70s buddy films. Like I could have seen Robert Redford starring in this, directed by Peter Yates.
Yes, and I also thought this had like the vibe of like one of those comedic heist movies, like those French films.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you would have told me this was a remake of a French film, it would have made sense to me.
Yeah, and I don't believe it is. But that also wouldn't have been surprising to me either. But even better that it's not.
And then it has a brief running time. It's like the perfect film.
Yeah, it's pretty slick.
I like the way it looks.
Shot by Henry Bram, who works with James Gunn. He did the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and 3 and The Suicide Squad. I believe he also did Roadhouse for Doug Liman. But yeah, I was just very pleasantly surprised.
What would you give The Instigators?
3.5.
I would give it 4 out of 5. I thought this movie was excellent. Beyond it not feeling like wholly original, and I will say there was a brief moment when I was getting a little like tired of some of the shenanigans, but overall I thought it was excellent. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.